Good morning, viewer. Welcome to our FOSAAC TV. Here's the breaking news. Yes, protest in Iraq intensifies as Sadr supporters reach PM's building. Supporters of Shia leader Muqtada al-Sadr reached the Iraqi Prime Minister's building on Saturday, following the protest against the nomination for Prime Minister by rival Iran-backed parties. Supporters of Shia leaders Muqtada al-Sadr reached the Iraqi Prime Minister building on Saturday following the protest against the nomination for Prime Minister by rival Iran-backed parties. Meanwhile, Iraqi security closed the roads to the building of the Supreme Judicial Council. Al Arabiya reported, adding that a leader in the Sadr's movement urged peacefully demonstration in front of the Judicial Council. Demonstrators waved Iraqi flags and portraits of al-Sadr, chanted and sat down in the legislative chamber with no lawmakers present. Thousands of protesters also gathered outside the parliament building with security forces using tear gas, water cannons and sound grenades to disperse them. Protesters also disassembled large concrete barriers surrounding the heavily fortified area. The unrest comes just days after hundreds of protesters on Wednesday burst into the heavily fortified green zone in the center of the Iraqi capital, dancing, singing, posing for selfie, and eventually peacefully dispersing, reported Sputnik. The Wednesday protest began after competing political function and faction failed to agree on the formation of a new government. Hundreds of protesters had descended on Iraq's parliament building on Saturday, putting on a repeat performance of Wednesday's unrest. The protesters were opposing the candidacy of Mohammad Shia al-Sudani for the post of prime minister, as they believe him to be too close to Iran. Al-Sadani is a former minister and ex-provincial governor and is nominated for the prime minister's post on behalf of the coordination framework. Visual from the side showed protesters singing and dancing, and one person was seen lying on the decks of the speaker of the Iraqi parliament. No lawmakers were present and only security forces were inside the building as protesters barked in, reported Al Jazeera. However, after a few hours of Wednesday protest, al-Sadr had issued a statement on Twitter telling them their message had been received and to return safely to their homes, signaling there would be no further escalation of the sit-in. Al Jazeera reported. Prime Minister Mustafa al-Kadhimi also called on the protesters to immediately withdraw from the closely guarded green zone, which is home to government buildings and diplomatic missions. In a statement, he warned that security forces would see to the protection of state institutions and foreign ministers and prevent any harm to security and order. Shortly after, protesters began making their way out of the parliament building with security forces supervising. Earlier, the police used water cannons to disperse the demonstrators, but still many breached the gates to the area, according to Al Jazeera. The demonstrators walked down the green zone's main thoroughfare with dozens gathering outside the doors to the parliament building. The demonstrators outside the two entrances to the green zone started chanting al-Sudani out. This incident and al-Sadr's subsequent show of control over his followers carried an implicit warning to the FOSAAC party of potential escalation if the government is formed with al-Sudani at the helm. Al-Sudani was selected by state of law leader and former Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki. Before al-Sudani can face parliament to be seated officially as Prime Minister designate, parties must first select a president. Notable, al-Sadr blocked 173 seats in Iraq's October 2021 election, making it the largest faction in the 329-seat parliament. But ever since the vote, talks to form a new government have stalled, and al-Sadr stepped down from the political process. A deadlock persists over the establishment of a new government. In 2016, too, al-Sadr's supporters stormed the parliament in a similar fashion. They staged a sit-in and issued demands for political reform after the then Prime Minister Haidar al-Abidi sought to replace party-affiliated ministers with technocrats in an anti-corruption drive. Mass protest erupted in 2019 amid public anger over corruption and unemployment, and this current protest pose a challenge for the oil-rich country. Bendazi, vote for FOSAAC TV.